Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. 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 Be cool, every teacher.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SDEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves COOL for short, and you can learn everything you need to know about us on this website right here, cewl.us. That's cool.us. You can learn everything about the things that we do, like wellness retreats, our cool coaching program, all the member-led content that we have, all the videos from Pete Stone are on there, articles from Steve Newsom. We've got cool yoga resources on there. So we want to invite you to just check out what we do at cool.us. And there's a place where you can contact us as well if you'd like to request free professional learning for your public school or district in South Carolina. Or if you have a conference coming up and you need some presenters, you can always reach out to us at Cool, and we'll do what we can to support the events that you have going on. Well, I am excited to be back tonight with another live stream, and tonight's guest is a 26-year education veteran who had a variety of educational roles, including elementary teacher, lead teacher, interventionist, and special education teacher. He's from Lancaster County, and so I'd like to welcome to the program Nicholas Nostro. How are you doing tonight, Nick?
I'm doing well, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Did I get your last name correct? Is it Nostro or Nostro?
Actually, it's Nostro.
Nostro. Sorry.
That's good, right?
Sorry, Nick. I want to make sure I like to get names correct. I think that's really important. Thanks so much for your time tonight. And I'm kind of interested because as we were talking before we came on, my career started in 1995, which to me doesn't seem like that long ago, but I know some younger folks are there thinking, wow, he's ancient. But in 1995, I was hired to teach at Lakewood Elementary School as a teacher of students with learning disabilities. And I was not certified for that. I had a permit to teach that while I was taking some courses to learn how to do that effectively. But I still had to write IEPs. I still had to send out invitations to the meetings and still had to organize these IEP meetings for parents and for the teachers that were involved in the lives of these students. And it was really, really challenging at first. IEPs can, for a lot of people, be very intimidating. And for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with IEP, it's individualized education plan. And Nick is an expert on IEPs. And I want to thank Melody Bollinger, who she is the UniServe director for the upstate here in South Carolina. She recommended Nick and felt like him bringing his expertise would be helpful to some educators out there who need some help in learning how to write an IEP. So let's start with that, Nick. Let's start with the idea of, for people who are new to this, exactly what an IEP is and why they are so important for our students in special education.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you were saying. Even back 26 years ago, I remembered the IEPs were being created old-fashioned, if you will, through just regular paper and pen. We had to write them on triplicate paper. And once you make a mistake on one, I remembered that you had to cross it out, rewrite it on the same form, and then you had to have everybody in the party to initialize it. So a lot has changed with writing IEPs, but the idea of writing an IEP is still very important because, as Todd said, it is an individualized education plan. And what's very important about an IEP is making sure that the student gets the resources and the tools that they need in order to bridge the gap that they have. Because remember, in order for a student to get an IEP, they have to go through the MTSS process, which is the multi-tiered system. And so everybody is at tier 1, which is where they're supposed to be along with their peers. But the dilemma is a lot of kids are falling behind. So we go through the MTSS process where the kids go to the next step and get an intervention from either the school psychologist or the interventionist at the school. Or when I used to be a lead teacher, I would be the one to provide the help that the child needed to figure out where the gaps are that the kids need for room for improvement. And of course, if the kid has the intervention and the intervention's not working, we would change the intervention. And then based on the data there, if they're still not where they want to be, then we would like to have them go to where we move them to the tier 3 process, where we would have the child evaluated by the psychologist, and then also along with the interventionist or lead teacher to make sure that we get enough data collected to determine whether or not a student needs to have an IEP. So that's pretty much the nitty-gritty of the process in order to get an IEP. Now I'd like to talk about a little bit about the IEP itself.
Okay. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
All right, so with regards to the IEP itself, depending on where you are as the teacher for special education, along with the school psychologist, it's really important to make sure that we're in constant communication with one another to make sure that we get the information that we need, not only from the child, but then also from the parents as well. Because it's very important that we get a lot of history of the child to get an idea of where the child is based on their education history, based on their social information, their physical information, environmental. There's a lot of aspects to it. In regards to writing the IEP, we want to make sure we do it in due diligence time. For example, with a lot of IEPs, like for example, if they're due, let's say October the 8th, we want to make sure we do it weeks in advance. So it's always a good idea for me. What I've done is, let's say the IEP was due October the 8th. I actually notify the parents at least a month to 2 months in advance. So even when school starts, I already let the parents know like their child's IEP is coming up in October. And so that way we could also pick a date that's good for the parent. So then that way we don't have a conflict of going over and becoming not compliance with the child's IEP. So I try to do that well in advance, and then knowing what this parent wants for the date of the IEP, like I said, about 2 weeks before the IEP is due, what I'll do is I'll set up the date. And what I love about EdPlan is that it's a flow chart. You just go with the flow of what you have to put in. The notice of the meeting is very important, making sure you have everyone that's involved as a team. So the IEP team includes your LEA representative, yourself as the special education teacher, the parents, either both parents or one parent, also any of the teachers, especially a general education teacher. Most notably, if it's an elementary, usually it's just one elementary teacher. If it's departmentalized, you might want to get a teacher where the child's IEP actually is needed assistance. So for example, if you have a child that is struggling in math, then it would probably be great to have a math teacher there. So that way you have that expertise of seeing what the child is and is not doing for that information. And it helps out creating the actual IEP goals along with the data that you collected by yourself with the previous IEP or from the information that you're getting from the school psychologist as well. So that being said, then, when creating the IEP itself, I know that there's a lot of teachers, I myself included, when I first started writing IEPs, and I'm Italian, so I like to talk. And the thing about talking is when you talk too much, sometimes the meetings last longer than what they need to be. And if you're getting the communication from the parents and from the other teachers and from the school psychologist, the meetings shouldn't really last that long because all the information that you're getting through the communication should be written in the IEP. And you really want to be very specific oriented, but at the same time, a summary will actually be a good idea as well. So once you have the meeting and everything, the biggest thing is that I've always see is when you're writing the IEP, you want to make sure that you have the information that you need as well as data. What I like to do is I create with my students what is known as a data notebook. And it's pretty much exactly what it says. It's their data notebook or data binder. And basically I have it where it's tabbed. And I probably could provide later on a picture of it through the Facebook page and after this live stream. But basically it has the student's IEP, parent guardian information, any benchmark data that we use, progress monitoring data, which is very important, and a lot of the students' work samples. And that work samples can also include the information for the student with progress monitoring. And so when you create the IEP and you already have the notice of meeting, again, making sure you have the present level of performance. And that's including the goals and objectives. So what I like to do is where it says data from the following sources were used to establish present levels and priority of education needs. Now, again, depending on where you are in writing an IEP, the information can come from the previous IEP. The parent input is very important. Annual goals and progress report, teacher observations and input. I also like to include the children's input. Now, for a lot of students, they're not at the transition to 13. That's another form of an IEP because you have an IEP and a transition to 13 IEP. And then later on, you actually have a transition to, I believe it's 18 IEP. So what happens is that's for goals to go on to college or vocational school or what they want to do for their career. But I always get my students' input because it's very important to get their say because it's their IEP. It's individualized to their need. So I always try to get their input as well. So they have that responsibility for it as much as we are responsible to make sure that we abide to the IEP along with their teachers and anyone else who's part of the IEP team. Summarizing parent input, that's very important. Again, summarizing what the parents are finding in their child's strengths, but then also what they feel is an area of concern. And then, again, also putting in information about the student. I like to say that the student is enjoying playing board games or is enthralled in their soccer matches during the fall. So it's those kind of things that you want to add into that IEP that makes it not only for the parents, but like I said, for the students as well. And then when it comes to the actual IEP itself, it's very important that we want to talk about what is their areas of strengths. And again, when you write an IEP, you want to make sure you write down as much information as you can. But again, you want to make it to where it's not a whole lot. What I like to do is when I do an IEP and I write about their strengths, what I like to do is I like to do it based on where they're doing both in reading, written expression, math, and if it's something with like a physical activity, because some IEPs might have a student that might need a IEP for a physical need, I also like to give them their areas of strengths as well in that IEP, what they're able to do. And then that could be math data as well. That could be from, again, parents' input, teachers' input, and you want to put all that in for that section. And then, of course, where it says for the area of concerns or their needs, that's where you really want to put in the idea of where they want to put the information is, where actually their goals are. So, like, for example, you could say that the student's area of concern is in reading context clues, working on reading fluency, inferential questions, whatever they have based on that IEP goals should be put and provided in their weaknesses. And then writing the actual goals. So in writing the actual goals, again, we used to write it, we still do want to write it where it's a SMART goal, but the wording now has changed to where you're saying given, and then what they're going to be doing. So I'll give you an example. For this student that I had that is a sixth grader, and they're still reading at a fifth grade. And this is based on the data that we've collected. And so given a fifth grade level reading passage, the student will determine the meaning of vocabulary words using context of the reading passage with 95% accuracy in 2 out of 3 trials. Now, what has happened is we used to write a lot more where it would say, given a fifth grade reading level passage, the student will determine the meaning of vocabulary words using context of the reading passage with 95% accuracy in 2 out of 3 trials from the previous goal of, let's say, 50% accuracy. We don't have to write that in the goal anymore. We mentioned that in the weakness part. So that way we're not repeating ourselves, because the data has already been mentioned and the input has been mentioned in the areas of academic strengths, and then also the areas of academic weaknesses, or I always like to say needs improvement. I don't like the word weakness, to be honest with you. And then the beginning date would be the date when the IEP is finalized, and usually it should be on the day of the actual meeting. And then, of course, it's 1 year minus 1 day for the following year. Now, for the evaluation procedures, in the past, a lot of people think they would say, as measured by AIMSweb or as measured by Acadians. We don't want to do that anymore. And the reason why we don't is because a lot of counties in South Carolina don't always use the same curriculum-based measurements. And so what happens is, let's say, for example, Lancaster uses Acadians, but let's say somebody in Cumberland, or let's say York County, uses AIMSweb, then the problem is then we would have to amend the IEP based on the information given from that. So that becomes like a conflict that we have to amend the IEP. So it's always good to say curriculum-based measurement, because it's broad enough that we know what the student needs to work on, and then works on it based on whatever we have in that county. In regards to another reading one, given a 5th grade level inferential question, the student will be able to answer them with 90% accuracy in 2 out of 3 trials. Now, a lot of people probably are going to ask, like, why is it 2 out of 3 and not, let's say, 4 out of 5? Well, again, it depends on the county. In the past, Lancaster used to be 6 weeks marking periods, but then we went back to the traditional 4 marking periods in 9 weeks' time. But the problem is, like, now that we're in October and we're almost getting to the end of the first marking period, the problem is you have from August until October to get as much data as you can with the student. And this is coming back previously from their prior progress monitoring that they've done. And you also have to look at their progress report. So remember, you're also taking information from their previous IEP and their progress report. And if you don't know the student and they were reading, let's say, according to progress monitoring, let's say the student was still at, let's say, 80%, then you still have to give a goal to where they are going at least 15% above. Now you're probably saying also, well, 90%, 95% is too high because usually a mastery goal is 80%. Well, again, this was written with the input from the parents. So out of that, we changed the accuracy rate to make it to where even if the student was still, let's say, at 75 or 80%, which means mastery, the parents still wanted to make sure that, you know, we hit 95% before we move the student to do 6th grade context clues passages to make sure that the student's getting on par, being that this student was a 6th grader. So that's really important. And then, again, just making sure that, you know, in writing the IEP, you want to make sure, again, you know, you have your, what is the frequency? Like, how often will the services being done? Now, with a lot of services, it depends on your district. In Lancaster County, the period is usually 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So it comes out to a total of 225. So again, you have to balance that services for that student based on their needs. And again, you can have direct services or indirect services. And then, of course, you want to make sure accommodations. Now, I know in writing accommodations, it's very important because a lot of us pretty much have the basic ones. And I do love about EdPlan is that, you know, you have the click down menus of the basic ones that we as special education teachers, general education teachers use, such as oral administration, preferential seating. Those are like the common ones that we always use. But the problem with those is we really need to be specific as to what oral administration means. So that's what I like about EdPlan is that it says describe any special instruction. So for example, with regards to oral administration, we made it to where we said oral administration. So I have it where it's written in bold, and then I write the actual instruction. So I'll say read aloud, and then in parentheses, by human and or electronically. And the reason why that's important is because sometimes there are programs that cannot be provided to be read on a computer. And so there are times where you're going to have a human factor. So that's why it covers both ends of a human as well as electronic. And in this case, we had the assignments, quizzes, and tests in math, science, social studies, and encores. And then read aloud by human and or electronically, assignments in ELA. with the exception of tests and quizzes assessing reading comprehension in reading and or writing. And the reason why we are saying that in this way was because in regards to when the kids take their assessments at the end of the year with the SC Ready, because they need to know if they're reading comprehending at their level, we do not provide them with the read aloud in ELA, both the reading and the writing, because there's also a reading story that you have to do for the writing. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. So you have to talk with your LEA representative, and then also making sure you check South Carolina Department of Education guidelines for those exceptions, especially when it comes to reading for ELA. Preferential seating. So what I have seen in the past about that is usually people will say, we'll sit next to instruction and or away from distractions to do their best writing and or when taking assessments. That's the standard as broad as it can be, but it could also be more specific. You could say that student will sit next to instruction and or away from distractions to do their best learning when taking assessments by her or by them. How can I word it? By taking assessments where they feel comfortable. So again, you want to try to be specific, but then also make it into the needs of that individual. Now, for me, I was hearing impaired, or I am hearing impaired, and I never had accommodations, but my preferential seating wasn't really sitting in the front. For me, it was actually sitting in the center. So if I were to have it written down, I would say Nick will sit next to instruction or away from distractions. It would be in the middle of the classroom to where Nick is available to hear throughout the entire classroom. So the wording has to be very important, and you want to try to make it as specific oriented to the needs of the child, but then you could also try to make it broad so that it's not always sitting in the front. And that's a lot of things that regular education teachers have a misconception of. It's where you want to fit it to where the child is. And then, of course, I could go on and on in writing an IEP, and I know we're almost out of time, Todd, but those are the basic things that I feel like are very important right now. But if you have any questions or if you like more information, you can find me on actually the Lancaster County Education Association website. That you can do, and you can always send me a message that way, or you could contact me in any other way possible. But I'm here for you, Todd. I could provide you some of my information.
Sure.
If anybody asks.
That'd be great. One question I have before we log off: when I was teaching, I was in the classroom for 15 years. 2 of that as a special ed, and then 13 not in general ed. I did notice that sometimes there was some tension between special ed and general ed teachers, especially around IEPs and accommodations. What are some things that you wish general ed teachers knew or would do that would help support the special education teachers and students in their building? Because I feel like sometimes there's that tension there, maybe some misunderstandings. What are some things that they should know? Because there might be some general ed teachers watching tonight, and I'd love for them to hear from you what they can do to be more supportive.
And I think you bring up a good point, Todd, because I remembered, you and I have been both regular and general education teachers. So I would like to say we have the best of both worlds. So coming from special education and a regular education teacher, we all have our strengths and our areas of improvement. And the thing is, we definitely need to make sure that we talk to each other. it's not a, I guess from certain perspectives, I think some people think that because we're special education, that we're more special than regular education teachers. That's not the case. A teacher is a teacher regardless of what is in front of us as a title, whether it's general education or special education. We are all teachers the same. The biggest thing is we need to meet the needs of the children. And meeting the needs of the children means to make sure that we work together with the children, to make sure that we abide to the IEP because that's a law-abiding document. And from my role as regular education teacher, I asked a lot of questions to the special education teacher. And that's very important because you're asking the questions that are important, like, why does the student have this accommodation? Or can you clarify what this accommodation mean? How can I work with this child with this reading goal? Because if I've already been doing that through the tiered system, and I've been the one who's been doing the intervention with the child, if it's not the interventionist or the lead teacher, then I need to know what else can I do to better help the student. So putting that from the regular education. From the special education perspective, I'm in constant contact with the regular education teacher to make sure I know that my students, or correction, our students. So you see what happened? A lot of people think it's like, it's my student. No, it's our students, and it's our responsibility. So the thing is, I want to check on our students to make sure that they're using the accommodations, that they are doing the best they can in the classroom. And I make sure that, working with the teacher to ensure that, the child's doing the best work that they can. And then also getting the feedback from the students to make sure that if I'm hearing something about a teacher, I'm going to talk to the teacher. If I'm hearing the teacher saying that their student said something about me, again, it's communication. It's very important. Reaching out to them, reaching out to us, reaching out to the parents and everybody who's involved in working with the child.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate your time tonight and your expertise in sharing so much vital information around IEPs. And hopefully folks who have questions will do so in the comments. And of course, we invite you to check out the Facebook comments and answer any of those questions that people might have, or share any resources that you feel would be helpful as people watch this. They might be watching it tomorrow or over the weekend. But thank you again, Nick, for all this great information tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
All right, you too. All right, everybody. That was Nick Nostro from Lancaster County. Wonderful information there about individualized education plans. Hope that was helpful for folks, and want to encourage you, if you have questions, to put those in the comments as you're watching. A couple of things I want to promote coming up. We have Cool Yoga. You can go to cool.us/yoga. Alex also does these live on Wednesday nights on our Instagram and TikTok channels. So if you're not following the SCEA on Instagram and TikTok, make sure you do that. Every Tuesday and Thursday night. This is one of the most amazing resources for induction teachers, and any educator in South Carolina in the first 5 years can access free online one-to-one support. You just go to cool.us/coaching from 6 to 8 p.m. anytime between 6 to 8 p.m. You don't have to commit to the whole 2 hours. You can show up at like 7:12 p.m. and just log on, and you'll be put into a room with one of these 3 veteran educators. And you can ask them questions, and you can get unfiltered advice without judgment, and ask questions about anything related to teaching, and they will be more than happy to support you. Coming up, we have a couple of really good live streams. This one is coming up in 2 weeks from tonight, on October 22nd. Matthew Bowerman is an administrator. He's going to be talking about trauma-sensitive spaces. And then in November, on the November 5th, I mentioned Alex earlier in his Cool Yoga series, He's going to be talking to us about yoga and social emotional learning for educators. A lot of times we talk about SEL and we think about SEL for students, but he's going to be talking about SEL for educators. And then coming back on the program is a favorite, Audrey Kalianos, who is a certified nutritionist. And she's going to be talking about linguistic neuroplasticity, and that's going to be on November 12th at 6 o'clock. And then we have a couple of new live streams that we just scheduled. One is with Sylvia Wright, who is a candidate for superintendent of education, and she is going to be appearing on the live stream coming up on December 5th at 6 o'clock. And then Lisa Ellis, who is also a candidate, she ran last time and she's going to be running again. She will be appearing on Cool Conversations January 7th at 6 o'clock. So we want to invite you to join us for all those live streams where you can interact as well. Every live stream is interactive. If you're on Facebook, you can type in comments and we can bring those comments and questions on, and you can participate live with us. So you can ask folks questions as we're interviewing them. Well, I want to thank Nick Nostro again for joining us and talking to us about IEPs. We hope this has been helpful. A couple of final things. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at Cool, this is the website, cool.us. And of course, we would not be here without the South Carolina Education Association, which is the South Carolina affiliate of the National Education Association. And Cool is funded by a GPS grant from NEA. And we're so thankful to NEA for providing us the funds to do this work, and thankful to partner with the SCEA to promote public education here in South Carolina. If you would like to be a part of the SCEA, which is the premier education advocacy group in South Carolina, go to this website, jointhescea.org. When you join the SCEA, you're also joining your local association, and Nick is part of the Lancaster Education Association. So you're joining your local, you're joining the state of the SCEA, and you're also joining the national, the NEA. We're the only teacher advocacy group in South Carolina where when you join, you're joining at that local, state, and national levels. We feel like this is important because policies that are created in Washington make their way to the State Department and to the State House, and they make their way from the state from Columbia out to local districts. So if we're not advocating at all three levels, we're missing something that's going to be really important to the lives of educators and their students. So we hope that you'll consider joining us and advocating locally, at the state, and nationally. NEA also has some incredible benefits. You can check out the benefits on the NEA website at neamb.com and learn more about insurance and credit cards and all pet insurance and travel discounts and things like that. There's so many benefits when you join the National Education Association, when you join us, because there are 3.2 million members. It's kind of like the AARP. You get all kinds of discounts and deals with different companies and groups, and we hope that you will take advantage of that. But the main reason to join is so that we can come together, because we're stronger together. We can identify issues or problems in our classroom or in our district or in our state or in the country, and we can talk about those things, or we can come together, organize, and actually do something about them as a collective. We're stronger when our voices come together and we work together to create those solutions to improve your lives and to deliver the kind of schools that you and your students deserve. So again, the website to do that is jointhescea.org. It's very, very affordable, and we hope that you will consider joining and supporting the South Carolina Education Association. Well, thanks again to Nick Nostro, and thank you for tuning in. And we will see you on our next live stream coming up on October 22nd. We'll be talking about trauma-sensitive spaces. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful week.